Ask and you shall receive. You've been asking us. I need to know when I can actually open the floodgates to spending. Tune in today and we're going to give you the answers.
It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
Well done. For a guy who was complaining about coffee, that was good. That was really good. So I am really excited about this. Brian, it's not a huge surprise. We, in our day jobs, we get to help folks make financial decisions. And a lot of time people equate that to like, how do I save more? How do I build wealth? How do I do this thing? But we talk about all the time. One of our favorite things to do is to be that voice of reason that tells people when they can take their foot off the pedal, where they can actually enjoy some of the fruits of their labor.
We just did a show. That's what y'all always, where did the show ideas come from? Well, we just done that show where I was very self-confessional about the fact that I'm no longer consider myself a tightwad. Now, if you were attending the live stream, I still have a lot of tightwad tendencies. I just can't get those out of my system. But it is one of those things where I love it. When we talked about this in pre-show planning, we were like, now that you unleashed, when do we tell clients that they can actually spend? When do we tell people, we're like, well, we ought to be able to, that ought to be a show. When do we actually get to live like no one else? We all hear these things. You're saving, but when do you start to put that needle over to it's okay and give yourself permission? Because that's the biggest thing. One of the favorite parts of being a financial advisor. Here's the negative. You have to tell people they're spending too much. But there is a huge positive, actually for a lot of our clients, is that they've been so good at accumulating assets, they actually have a hard time breaking the habit of building that we tell them it's okay to start consuming.
That's right.
And I love it when we get to break that point to them.
And I think one of the common misnomers that people have is that, oh, well, that happens at retirement or that happens at the financial independence point. We're actually going to talk to you today about not only does it happen there, but there are actually times throughout your accumulation journey, throughout your building journey, where you can give yourself the freedom, even if you're young, even if you're early on, even if you're in the beginning stages, where it's okay to spend so long as you're doing the things you're supposed to do.
So let's jump right into these. And I was so excited about this slide. And here's the first slide is FOO steps are followed. By the way, here's what I think is awesome. I'd like to tell you my entire life is I can't say Mr. Magoo because that has gotten to be so old. Forrest Gump might very well become. It's kind of getting old too.
Everyone recognizes.
But I do feel like I am the accidental success story on most things. And once again, I have stumbled into something awesome. Is that we've been talking about for years, financial order of operations. Right. I mean, it is one of, if I call it Money Guy 101, you want to understand financial order of operations. One of our I can't remember if it was YouTube or podcast world, but Money Guy family members said, we love the FOO steps. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is one step closer to Dave Grohl. Because it is, because when I'll do all this stuff completely by accident, I'm like, this means that Dave Grohl and I are meant to be best friends. I mean, I look at this as a sign that we're supposed to be. You hear that thunder?
Dave, if you're listening, we'd love to have you on the show.
So let's talk about this, because I do want to talk about financial order of operations. This is one of those things, and we're going to go much deeper in this. I've got some things in the works. Even late last night, I was working on some ideas with this financial order of operations, and I want to kind of go through this rather quickly. And that we have other resources in the past that people can look into, but this is when we talk about financial order of operations. But let's go through these pretty quickly.
Yeah, and so sign number one is not that you've completed it, but that you are following the steps correctly. And so in order to know if you're following the steps correctly, you have to actually know what the steps are. So step number one in the Money Guy order of operations is deductibles covered. You want to make sure that you have that money set aside that can get you out of the ditch. If things are going haywire, you at least have enough to cover health insurance deductibles, auto deductibles, homeowners deductibles, whatever's required if there were a catastrophic event, you have it there to get you out of the ditch.
This is where, most people, we know the stats. I'm going to cover it in a minute. Most people can't come up with $1,000. Right. So you were right. This is just to keep you from the danger zone. Yep. So it's not, you aren't popping bottles on number one. This is just, like I said, to keep this thing from running aground. And remember, because I don't think I set up the financial order of operations, what makes this so foundational is that just like we talk about all the time, we think a lot of finance is very math-based. I mean, matter of fact, people get on to us. They say, no, behavior. And we're like, yeah, we get the behavior, but if you're neglecting the math,
sure,
you are doing this thing all wrong. And that's why we just spoke at a group of structural engineers.
Yep.
So we got hired to come up and talk about that. And the first thing we did was we showed them a math equation that had exponents in it, had parentheses, it had multiplication tables, had division, had subtraction and addition. And we asked them, we said, how in the world did you guys know how to do this? And they all were able to say, you know,
it was order of operations.
Yeah,
PEMDAS.
It was PEMDAS, which was, and I always screw this up, but it's like, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally.
You nailed it.
See,
that's the first time I've ever heard you get it right. You nailed it.
But it's the same thing. So I want to give the context so that everybody understood, why is this so powerful? Finances is the same as the way you do order of operations with math. You need to do it in the right order so you actually make your system as efficient as possible.
So step one, you have your deductibles covered. Step two is go out there and get free money. And the place that most often you can obtain free money is the match from your employer on an employer-sponsored retirement plan, like a 401k, simple IRA, 403b, those types of retirement accounts.
The reason it's the second step is because 50 to 100% rate of return guaranteed, that's what matching money typically is. You can't leave that on the table.
Step number three is high interest debt. We normally see these in sort of three forms. It's either credit card debt or some sort of consumer debt. It's student loan debt, or what we see very often in this country is auto loan debt.
Yeah. Napalm for your finances is your car loan. So be very careful of all the high interest debt.
Step number four is you want to make sure you have emergency reserves. So now this is graduating a step past just covering the deductibles. This is where you actually have enough to cover you if you were to be laid off, if you were to have some sort of catastrophic event, and you want to have somewhere between 3 to 6 months of living expenses.
We like having margin. I mean, just like you want to have some flexibility in your system, because flexibility gives you the option to figure out things a little bit better. So that's what the emergency reserve is going to do. As Bo said, 3 to 6 months. Now, I know we have listeners of all ages. If you are somebody who's living off of your resources, meaning you're actually fully retired, it very well could be 18 to 36 months. So it's one of those things. Take that into account, but definitely nice to have emergency reserves.
Number five. Now, this is one that causes a little bit of dissension here at the firm because we don't know how to prioritize this. We don't agree on how to between Roth contributions or health savings account contributions. What I would say is the step that you actually do is make sure you take advantage of any tax-free savings opportunity that are available to you.
Tax-free. That's the key part. We all love, our favorite taxing uncle, there's a reason he restricts who can do this, when you can do this, and how much money you can make to put these money in. If our favorite taxing uncle is putting those type of restrictions, it means it's good. So pay attention.
Step number 6, this is where you want to go back to your retirement plans, back to the 401k, back to the 403b, back to the simple. Once you've gotten the match, once you've maxed out tax-free, then you want to step to your tax-deferred savings options. Step number 7, this is where you want to start looking at hyper accumulation.
Yeah, and what we like also at this stage, this is when you're going to start paying attention to, you've already maxed out your retirement plans. You're going to start paying attention to tax location. We just did a show probably a month and a half ago on the Secure Act. There's all things, and this is, I love target retirement funds, but you do, by the time you get to hyper accumulation, you might be outgrowing your target retirement funds because you got to get more efficient with how are you doing the charitable planning? How are you doing loss harvesting? How are you doing the tax location? There's so many things that are going on at this stage.
Step number 8 is prepaid future expenses. So this is saving for college, saving for weddings for the kids, saving for gifting strategies or charitable inclinations, legacy-wise. These are prepaid future expenses that you think you're going to have.
And then you know what number 9 is. I almost feel like it needs a drum roll because so much of our content recently, and it's because, look, we just can't help it. Is we see much of the content that you guys just engage with and come to like bees on honey, or maybe that's not a good, that's a cleaner analogy than the one that you hear people say on stuff. But it's one of those things. Number 9 is prepaying low interest debt. We're talking about this is when you prepay your mortgage debt. We've done all kinds of things. I love you being debt-free. I love you being unencumbered, but there's a time or place. You just want to make sure while you're under 45, you're taking advantage of that compounding growth, which is one of the most powerful components of your financial independence.
So one, how do you take this? Well, obviously you want to use these steps to make sure you are following along. And if you find that you are someone who's following along, hitting each one of these steps, and you know that you're doing the things you're supposed to do, when you're supposed to do them, the way you're supposed to do them, it's okay for you to move into that phase of maybe starting to get to live like someone else, live like no one else.
So remember, what we're talking about today is when do you actually get to release? That's what Bo was just talking about. So step 1 was the financial order of operations. Step 2 we talk about this. This is kind of the umbrella that sits on top of everything. We want your aspirational goal is to get to 20 to 25% savings rates ASAP. Now, look, I get it. All of you that are 22, 23, 24 years of age, you're like, 20 to 25%? Who is doing that? And I'll tell you who's doing it. Millionaires.
That's right.
I mean, that is the dirty little secret, is that for all of you folks that are out there saying, I can't do this, nobody is saving 20 to 25%. I'm telling you, there is vast numbers of people that are doing this type of behavior.
Yeah, and I would say it's either millionaires, or what I get even more excited about when I hear that, it's millionaires in the making. It's the folks that are going to move into that area.
So this is the mindset that I see so many comments that come in on YouTube where people, when you give me a comment that says, I can't save 20 to 25%, I mean, I feel like, it's one of your kids when you're like, can't. How, can't? Why is that in your vocabulary? Because you can. I mean, a lot of you guys, if you're making $40,000 a year, you could structure your living expenses $30,000 or $32,000. There's ways you can. And look, I know a lot of you guys are like, oh, it's easy for those fat cats to sit up there. Nobody's journey ever looks back. When you start to see success, you never get to see where things come from, and you definitely don't come from any resources. Yep. I don't, so it's not that self-made. It's just that we know the plight that you've had. We've experienced it, and we want to be honest with you, because there's a saying out there. I love this, but go ahead and pull up the quote, because I think it's an important thing. Read the quote real quick.
So this is from Jim Rohn. He says, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
So if you're one of these people that says there's no way I could save 20 to 25%, I want you to think about that quote, because that means you might be surrounding yourself with people who are not aspirational, who are not glass half full, because part of success is making sure you are an optimistic type personality, and you're not one of these people that's just absorbing all negative energy and not thinking about how I can make things better. But 20 to 25% is one of those things you're going to have to be very deliberate and work on that. And look, I get it. While you're 22, 23, 24, 20, 25% might be aggressive. But that doesn't mean every time you get a pay raise for the next 5 to 7 years, how about half of that going, instead of increasing lifestyle? That's the easy answer, because there's an entire consumer industry that wants to suck your wallet dry. How about having half of that actually go to increasing your monthly savings?
That's exactly right. I think it's interesting, this idea of you are who you spend the most time with. If you're someone out there listening in iTunes World or on iHeartRadio or Stitcher, we record this show live, right? So we're in front of an audience right now out on YouTube, and I just love the comments that are coming in right now. Our folks are like, I'm saving 30% of my income. Yeah. I'm saving 80%. If you are listening to this show, there's a chance, even if you're just in the chat room right now, you are surrounding yourself with people that think the same way you do and behave the same way you do. It's amazing how contagious that behavior can be. So you said it perfect. If you can't start at 20 to 25%, just start somewhere and get better through time, and you'll be amazed at how quickly your wealth building happens.
And that quote that we had up there about you are the sum of the average of the 5 people, I thought it was interesting. We moved, because this is where I'm telling you, the invisible hand of what drives success. When we moved to Nashville, had no idea. I mean, we did it, Bo, seeking opportunity for you, putting you in fertile ground. Me, I had a special needs child that there's a special school up here, so we took a leap of faith that bringing her to this school and relocating the office was going to be powerful. Had no idea there was going to be a side benefit, is that there's going to be a gazillion creatives.
That's right.
This is a community of creative content creators. You got music people, you got video people, you got so many people that there is no way, without a doubt, the Money Guy Show would not be in its hyper growth phase right now if we had not moved to this area and now started being surrounded by all these people.
True.
That has completely changed our mindset. So you don't even know what you're trapped in until you see and open your eyes and see whether other opportunities are going on.
Yep.
So that leads to, and look, that was already uncomfortable for me, but I want to kind of talk about one more thing. Let's go a little deeper in the behavioral aspect. We're nerds. I'm a CPA, you're a CFA. We don't sometimes like to do the squishy stuff, but and it's especially the squishy stuff that makes you, the listener, uncomfortable, because I'm a Southern gentleman. I mean,
people pleaser.
Anybody, I'm a people pleaser, and people know that. And I don't know if it's a Southern thing, but it's definitely people who are passive aggressive because, like, bless your heart and doing all these other things. I'm going to be real with you because I think this is a concept you need to understand on what the number one reason why people are broke. So pay attention in the fact that it takes a lot for a guy who's super polite to kind of get in your face and actually shoot you straight on this, is that the average American does not have an income problem. You are flat out not doing it because you have a spending problem. I mean, that is the honest truth. Nobody likes to talk about it because we get it. It's easy for us, and especially in this society we're in right now, success has become kind of a scarlet letter.
Yeah.
And which is crazy to me because coming from not much money, you not coming from much money, you always want to be aspirational.
Absolutely.
You were trying to improve yourself. What is the thing we're trying to do with our kids? We want our kids to have better opportunities than we have for ourselves. But somehow in this society, it's gotten better. You see it on all this. You go on Twitter. I think to be successful on Twitter, you have to be a snark fest. Nobody's learning on Twitter.
Right.
You're getting snarky comments and other things like that. So maybe this is a perfect quote for Twitter because it's snarky. But the number one reason you're broke is because you're just not focusing on the spending. You're focusing on how miserable your situation is. And here's the truth of the matter: you have two options. You can either make more money, invest in yourself, or you can start spending a heck of a lot less. And the good news is a little goes a long way the younger you are.
Yeah, I think you said that beautifully, Brian. There are really only two options.
Yeah.
You can either make more money or you can spend less money. That's it. And you got to figure out which one of those you actually have control over. And the hard truth is most of us, or a lot of folks, have a hard time making more. Maybe you can't go do a side hustle, or maybe in the job you're in you can't move vertically. But almost everyone can spend a little bit less. Almost everyone can back down, tighten the belt. And it's amazing how those small changes, very small sums of money, just like you said, can go a long, long way.
Well, let me give it, because I can't do a squishy segment without some data, because I start itching and twitching if I don't put data in there. You know, when we talk about, Chris Hogan has a book, Everyday Millionaires. It's up here on the shelves behind us. He has 62% of millionaires earned on average a household income of $100,000 or less.
So what this is saying is that, like, the majority, because that's more, the majority of millionaires aren't high-income households. They're not six-figure folks. They're just folks who have mastered this behavioral saving money issue.
73% of millionaires have never had a penny of credit card debt. That doesn't mean they're not using credit cards. That means that they're paying them off and not carrying any type of debt whatsoever. Because let's face it, if you're paying 17 to 22% interest on a credit card, your compounding interest is working against you instead of for you. And then the other part is I think that we also, because I'm probably even guilty of this because I have a teenage child as well. We want their life, because I've already said it. What is our goal? Is we want to make, I want them to be more successful than even what I am. But the problem is sometimes that we equate that to, we're going to make it easier.
That's right.
For them. And easier is not the same as being more successful, because then I think it's better if we give a snapshot, just self-reflective. Because Bo, I've watched you. I got you right out of college. You were 20 years of age. I think it's hilarious that I hired you before you can even of legal age, essentially, in a lot of states. But it's one of those things I know for the first few years, you lived off of cereal. You studied. I mean, there was a lot of self-sacrifice there, not a lot of living.
No, I'm not incredibly proud of this, but Publix had a 2-for-1 cereal deal, and I was a young single guy, and so I would literally go to Publix and I'd buy 15 boxes of cereal, and that's what I'd eat because I wanted to be safe. I wanted to max out my Roth IRA. That was something that was really important to me. And I recognized rather than going out and doing the stuff and going to the bars like all my friends were, I should probably go ahead and pass this CFP thing and then pass this CFA thing. By doing those things, it sucked. But man, did it pay off later on in life. And man, was it so worth it.
And as I kind of resemble that is that I remember the first 4 years out of college, my friends were going to Mardi Gras because we had we had a sweet hookup. One of my buddies is married to a girl whose parents were right in the French Quarter. Never got to go. You know, I was studying for the first 4 years to get every certification. Because look, this baby face that makes this late 40s look like I'm in my early 40s when I was in my 20s, this looked like I was 12. So, it's not like people
You had to do something
wanted
to age
somebody
yourself a little bit.
managing money. So my insecurity fueled me to go get every certification I possibly could. That's where the CPA, the CFP, the PFS, I wanted to put some weight behind me. So the first 4 years was no enjoyment whatsoever. It was all focus, study, and make it happen. So you can either make less money, you can make more money. Either way, you don't have an income problem, you have a spending problem. So wake up that invisible hand inside your brain and get things moving forward.
That's exactly right.
Okay, I can go back to being a Southern gentleman now.
breath.
So let's kind of talk about, because it is a transition point that I want to kind of show people that you can make money of the power of starting young.
Yeah. So, how do millionaires actually become millionaires? What's the thing that they do? They start young. They recognize how powerful their dollars can be.
We are known for the concept of 88 times over, meaning we tell you that for guys, if you take $1 when you're 20 years of age, it's actually the equivalent of $88 when you're 65. So that way you will have the perspective of every dollar I spend as a 20-year-old actually has more power than what I realize. It's actually the equivalent of $88 in the future. I decided, let's have a hyper illustration to show that that's only the tip of the iceberg on the power of compounding interest and letting your money work for you. So I'm not counting on you guys to actually do this, but I want to give you perspective on how powerful this compounding interest, where a little goes a very long way. And for those of you that have kids and grandkids, wake up to these next few numbers.
So we said, okay, what does it look like if you start young? So we said, what can $1 become by the time you're 65? And we always talk about the 88, just like Brian said. Well, look at this. For a 1-year-old, someone at the very beginning of their life, maybe a child, a baby, a grandson, granddaughter, $1, assuming a 10% rate of return until retirement, could turn into $586 by the time that they get to retirement.
I mean, now that bottle warmer looks a lot more ridiculous now. If you think about that, what a bottle warmer costs never gets used, or maybe the wipes warmer. That's probably the wipes warmer.
Bottle warmer got used. The
wipes warmer. Everybody buys them, and you're like, Nobody uses that. Nobody
thing.
uses a wipe warmer. You're just trying to get poop off your fingers. You don't care if it's hot or cold. You're just trying to get a wipe out as fast as possible.
At 10 years old, $1 can still turn into $239. So if a 10-year-old and you decide you want them to go rake leaves and you're going to flip them a 5 for doing that, you should show them what that $5 bill can turn into if they decide to, instead of spending it on bubble gum, go put that to work for them. At 20, it's 88 times over. That's the thing. That's the crux we always talk about. At 30, $1 can still turn into 23. And at 40, $1 can still turn over 7 times. But you can just see in this illustration how much more powerful it is if you can start early.
So guys, when you start boo-hooing that you don't make any money, you make $25,000 or $30,000, I want you to look at a slide like this and think about your 88 times over. Think about your, the 54 times over for somebody who's in their mid-20s. There is an opportunity there that your little can go a very long way. And this will also give you perspective when you're looking at the 40 or 50-year-old and you're like, man, I wish I had what they have. Mm-hmm. They're looking at you going, man, if I only knew back then what I know now, I could rock this thing. So use that power and harness it and bring yourself to the next level of financial success.
So, okay, Brian, so let's talk a little bit about, we've talked about how you have this mindset of starting young. Let's take it even a step further and talk about how do millionaires actually become millionaires?
Yeah. Well, it's really one of those things. We've already kind of alluded to some of this, is that they're very good with their resources. They live on less than they make. Yep. They're very efficient with their careers, but also how they allocate their time. So it kind of makes sense for us to kind of pay attention to what millionaires are and what millionaires are not.
That's right. That's the big
Because that's a big part, is because I think there's a lot more negative behaviors than there are positives, because we can kind of go through both.
Yep. So the very first thing that we noticed when we looked at what millionaires are not is 78% of workers, this is just analytical fact, 78% of workers right now admitted that they live paycheck to paycheck, from one pay cycle to the next pay cycle. If you have an aspiration to be a millionaire, someone who builds wealth, you are not someone who needs to live paycheck to paycheck. You need to actually be chiseling away a little bit of each paycheck so that in the future, your paychecks will give you a paycheck. That's the way that it works.
What I think is interesting, you had mentioned that you did this in pre-show planning, Bo. You said if people just can understand, we talk about 20-25%, but let's be real here for a 20-something-year-old. Maybe it's only 15%. If they did that just for 5 months, in no time they've already got a full month or 2 months worth of savings built up.
Extra paycheck banked up. It's huge, and it's not hard to do. That's huge.
And this was something. By the way, I want to tell you guys, the financial media got me. They got me, and I was ticked off at it because there is a brand new headline from Bankrate that nearly 4 in 10 Americans would have to borrow money to cover a $1,000 emergency. So I was like, wait a minute, because guys, we study the same data and research reports every year, and immediately when I saw that, now it was negative everywhere. I saw it on every news channel that I watch in the morning where they were covering this 4 in 10 because it's a shock and awe type stat that means that people are in horrible financial situation. I was thinking this is a glass half full moment because I knew the actual number that has been going on for as long as I've been covering the statistic that Bankrate puts out every January is that 60% of Americans can't come up with $1,000. So when I see the number is 4 in 10, I'm like,
that's 40%.
That's a 50% improvement. If it's now 40, that means 20% of the people. This economy is cranking so fast that 20% of the people now have $1,000 improvement over last year. Full-time equivalent Daniel and I pulled up the stat. It is actually the exact same number within 1%. The only thing they did in that headline is that they let you count crazy things like you'll go borrow from a relative or other things. So the number is still just as cruddy as it's always been. 60% of Americans can't come up with $1,000. I went a long way around the hill. That will get us some troll comments. You're right. I could have just published 60%. I want to tell you all that story. Take it.
So if you are a millionaire or an aspiring millionaire, you probably fit into the camp is that you can come up with $1,000 if you had an emergency.
So I want to flip the script because let's talk about what millionaires are. We already know millionaires, just over 50% of Americans invest. So if you think about that when I hear that stat, that means 50% of Americans, half, don't even have the understanding of the power of compounding interest or letting their army of dollar bills do the heavy lifting for them.
You know, I wish I would have looked up this stat before, but I imagine more than 50% of Americans have access to some sort of retirement account, right? And I would imagine that the majority of our retirement accounts have some sort of employer match. When I see that only just over 50% invest, does that mean that there's just a huge swath of people not even taking advantage, not even getting past step number 2 of the Money Guy order of operations because they're not going out and taking advantage of that free match in their employer's
Well, I grew up in one of those households. I mean, my parents were spectacular at the resource management, meaning saving was never the issue. But my parents' idea of investing was CDs.
Yep.
I mean, because it was just an unsophisticated understanding of how money and your army of dollar bills works. That's why we didn't have podcasts. We didn't have YouTube. Can you imagine if my dad was alive right now while we had the Money Guy show out there? I could have lit him up. I mean, while he was young, younger John Preston would be rocking the savings right now. I would have altered my entire family dynamic just if my parents could have this. But they don't. So there is 50% of the population that does not understand the value. Because here's the other thing that I think is lost when we go over that stat of 88 times over. When you look at the money you invest when you're in your 20s and what it becomes by the time you're 65, I think you'll be shocked because we've seen the data. Over 95% of the value is not what you put in, not the principal. It's actually the growth.
The earnings.
So what you put in is only minimal. You essentially planted the seed. Because when you look at a thing of corn, corn's big. I mean, it's taller, as tall as you and I. There's a reason we make corn mazes. You can't see what's going around. It started with a little kernel. But you don't have the ability to see that visual that this kernel is going to make it where I can't even see through if I will just plant it and let this thing do what it does. Unleash the power of the starch that's in that little kernel. You can do the same thing with your money.
I love it. And so if you are one of those little kernels, we thought one of the things that might be valuable for you to see is how do millionaires spend their time? What are the things that they do their time? And we went to one of our favorite resources on this. You know, if you've listened to the show for any amount of time, you know that the Millionaire Next Door is just a huge thing that we love. Well, then there was a revision by Dr. Stanley's daughter, Sarah, and she did the next Millionaire Next Door, where she kind of looked at okay, what do millionaires do? How do they spend their time? Where do they put their efforts? And if you can kind of, again, remember, you are the sum of the 5 people that you spend time around. So if you think about the way that millionaires spend their time, maybe there's something you could take away and discern from that on how you ought to think about spending your time.
And what I like about this is you pull up this deliverable. This is actually on our website. You know, we can if you go to moneyguy.com, on our resource page, we have this. You know, because when Sarah was on our show, if you want to go check out that show, she shared, it's in the book. It's in, I meant to bring my book and hold it up.
It's sitting on the conference table right now.
It's sitting on the conference table from the pre-show planning. But Daniel, fortunately, has given us the so you can see all the pertinent data. But Bo, go through kind of these things, because I think people will be surprised to see, just like Sarah's father, Dr. Thomas Stanley, shared, millionaires are very efficient with how they allocate their resources and their time, and this shows it.
That's exactly right. So they looked at what the average American does versus what the millionaire does. The average American works about 32 hours per week. I was actually kind of surprised by this. The average millionaire works about 38 hours. What this told me is, to be a millionaire, to be someone who has financial success, it's not about going out and working 90, 100 hours a week. It's about mastering that behavioral piece. You can work a normal work week, but if you can master saving and deferred gratification, it sets yourself up for success.
Now, I feel like one of our trolls on YouTube, because there are usually 26,000, I'm exaggerating, comments trying to explain the difference between median and averages.
Sure.
But it is one of those things I want to go ahead and tell my 20-year-olds and even early 30-year-olds, it sucks in the beginning. So your number probably is going to be bigger than 38.4. I know for myself, there's a reason they were giving us so much comp time. I was definitely working 50 to 60 hours a week in my 20s. I mean, it's just a fact. I do think there's probably, this number is skewed by workers who are younger giving more. There's even, I remember associates had to have so many billable hours, whereas partners just didn't, because they're working on vision and other things. Doesn't mean the partners aren't worth every penny of what they've done. It's just that their focus is now different. It's more on vision planning. It's more on growth and marketing. Whereas when you're young, you kind of have to work.
You can see that the average American spends about 2 hours per week reading. The millionaire spends about 5.5 hours. I thought this was interesting. On social media, the average American, 14 hours. That's 2 hours a day on social media. Average millionaire, 2.5 hours. We'll see as time goes on if that number changes at all. Average American exercises 2.5 hours a week. The average millionaire actually doubles that. They recognize that this body, you only get one of them. We probably ought to take care of it. Average American spends about 3.5 hours per week taking care of family. Millionaires spend 8.5. They focus on relationships and working and caring for others. Average American spends almost 2 hours per week on video games. Millionaires spend less than an hour. They're not spending a lot of time on video games, doing that sort of thing.
Kids will fix that too.
Kids will certainly
because I love
that.
video games, but babies blow up your ability to play video games.
And then the last one, time spent sleeping. The average American sleeps almost 9 hours. That is just befuddling to me, but I have little kids. That makes sense. Average millionaire sleeps a little over 7.5 hours. So not a huge discrepancy there, but just something to be aware of.
So all these things point to the fact that you've got to be good with your time. You've got to be good with how you invest your resources. You get one life. Bo talked about the exercising. There is a reason these millionaires, they figured out something that the rest of us kind of take for granted. We're not assured tomorrow's going to happen. We just had the whole Kobe thing. I mean, I had a whole text chain with some buddies. Like, oh my gosh. I mean, because this dude is 41 years old. He is starting to rock the entrepreneurial business world. Nothing is guaranteed. So a lot of millionaires, myself included, we exercise not because we love it. I actually hate every minute. I'm not like you. I hate every minute. The best part of exercising is the drive home. But I do. I reflect that number is because I don't want to leave this party too early. So don't take it for granted, guys. Every one of these behaviors, I use exercising as an example, but it really is. You need to think about every dollar in your army, meaning every dollar you make. Am I maximizing its opportunity? Attack this thing so that you're not squandering and you losing decades that could be something that's creating something really incredible for your household and your family.
If you really like this deliverable, we actually make this available on our website. If you haven't had a chance to check out our resource page, go to moneyguy.com, click on resources. You can go download this deliverable, take it, to work, show it to all your friends and family, and show them, hey, here's some things that we ought to be thinking about in terms of how we spend our time.
Now, we did something fun because remember, this is a segment that we're focusing on to give yourself permission to spend as you're trying to save. It's step 2 is you're saving 20 to 25% of your income. We thought it would be a fun exercise to run around the office and ask everybody here, what are some of the quirky things you've done to save money? Now, look, this is entertaining for us, but it's going to be great for you guys too. It'll scratch that itch to let you see who the team members are behind the curtain as well. And obviously, you're pulling up, Bo, that I've done this a little out of order. So I'm going to let you fix this record and correct where I'm wrong on this.
No, I just thought this was interesting because we were talking about time. And I think, again, this just goes to show, again, we're talking about if you want to be a millionaire by the time you get to 65, again, how powerful starting early can be. At 20, you only have to save $95 a month. And then at 55, you have to save $5,000. But we get troll comments all the time of folks saying $1 million today isn't worth what $1 million is going to be in the future. So you guys are always saying this to me. You're always giving me this $1 million thing. We said, okay, we hear you. We are going to respond. We hear you. Well, we did some research to figure out what the new $1 million was. And this is what we discerned. The new $1 million goal that we used to have back when the Millionaire Store was written is $3 million, right?
Well, and full disclosure, Sarah, when we interviewed her, I think she used the number of $1.5 million.
Okay.
But us being who we are, we said, let's go over the top. All these trolls are saying $1 million's not good enough. I know $3 million is rocking it, because even if you are just a mediocre investor, you make 5% a year, have a 5% withdrawal rate. I mean, you can quickly see that's 150 G's forever.
Yep.
I mean, so this is completely something that's doable for a lot of people. But when you see the numbers, because a lot of people are going to look at this, what it takes to be a millionaire, they go like, man, it really gets kind of freaky if you think about I have to save $1,300 a month when I'm 45 years old, or when I'm 50, I have to save $2,500, and $5,000 just seems like craziness. But 95, 158, 270, 452, even the 780, all that seems reasonable, and that's just to get to $1 million.
That's right.
Flip the switch, show them what we're talking about for $3 million.
So yeah, this is what I think is incredible. If you're someone who's 20, you say, you know what, I don't want to just be a millionaire. I want to be a multi-millionaire. I want to get to $3 million by the time I retire. $286 a month.
You can do that.
$286 a month is all it takes to get to $3 million. For a 25-year-old, it's $474 a month.
By the way, you know what I like about the 25-year-old math? Roth IRA contribution.
Oh, I love it.
How much can you put in a Roth this year?
$6,000 per year.
Divide that by 12, Bo.
$500 per month.
Wow. Imagine if you could have a tax-free $3 million when you get there. That would be powerful.
That's beautiful. If you're a 25-year-old and you're just maxing your Roth out every single year from now until the time you get to retirement, you're setting yourself up to be a multimillionaire. That's beautiful.
Powerful stuff.
At 35, it goes to $1,300. At 40, $2,300. At 45, $4,000. And then at 50 and 55, if you start from a dead stop and you're trying to get to $3 million, it's going to be difficult. So perhaps your number isn't $3 million. But we just want to show you this is attainable. So don't come at us saying, "Oh, $1 million doesn't do." Okay, save more. You can do it. It is possible. It is available. It is accessible.
So this vision, this is the power of money. You can't fight the math. The younger you are, the less excuses you should have. But remember, we're talking about when do you have permission to spend. Yep. What you're trying to do is get to 20 to 25% savings rates. Because guess what happens after you get at 20 to 25%? You can kind of go take a deep breath, relax, know you've got an automated plan that's working for you, and then kind of unleash and go through some of those other financial order of operations where you can enjoy life and not feel guilty about it. Permission to spend. Now, we want to do something fun, and we want to go through and let team members share some of the tightwad things they've done, or embarrassing ways. That's probably since we've gotten away from the tightwad concept. What's some embarrassing ways that they have actually saved money?
And remember, because you have two options out there. You can either make more or spend less. And so I think what's beautiful is when we polled some of these were ways to make more money and some of them were ways to spend less money. But I think the beautiful thing is really about mindset.
Well, and that's because here's the thing I have realized doing this. I've been managing money for over, I'm in my third decade of doing it, 20 plus years. And I've hired quite a few financial advisors too. And one of the things, this is not said lightly. Every one of our primary advisors, if something happened to me, I would be okay with my wife talking to them. Because
100%.
These guys, and you're going to see it in some of these tips, you're cut a certain way. You are wired. Even though I knew nothing about investing, there's a reason. The $7 date night was not by accident. I mean, this brain was already trying to figure out how you maximize resources. Yep. You're going to see our team is just as good. And that's why you guys should feel very comfortable. Anybody you talk to from a Bound Wealth or Money guy, these guys, we recognize they cut from the same cloth, and it's good for you.
That's exactly right. So I'll kick this thing off because I noticed that I'm the first one up there. Now, if you're out there listening on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, we got some visuals. And if you want to see pictures of our team members, because we actually have a picture of every team member we're talking about up here, go out to YouTube and check it out so you can see. The picture I'm bringing up right now, interestingly enough, this is actually me and my wife on our very first date. Why her mother was taking pictures of us, her mother, because we were really young back then, was taking pictures of us on our first date, I have no idea. But here's one of the things that I did early on, because it's about spending more or saving less. When we first got married, I refused to turn on the heat in wintertime till about February the 15th. So every night before we go to bed, I would ask my wife, hey, you cold? She'd say, yes, my teeth are chattering. I said, great. Put on a hoodie, put on socks, put on sweatpants, let's go to bed. And you
So
think about
romantic.
all that electricity I saved, all that gas I saved, Roth just kept cooking.
I imagine this is the time you quit eating cereal, though.
Yeah,
You probably were trying to make up the money you had quit spending on cereal and were buying real
That's right.
substance and food.
That's exactly
You
right.
had to make it up by cutting the temperature of the house. So we picked on you first. I think it's only fair. And this was, by the way, they asked me for a picture. And this led to, if y'all think these rabbit trails that I take you guys on with the tangents, all you trolls, I do it to everybody here. If you worked here, I'm this same person in real life too. This turned this exercise of giving them a picture into a 45-minute walk down memory lane through my senior year yearbook.
I love it.
So here's what I showed them. I had a picture. Now this is actually my buddy's car because his car was much cooler than mine. And Carmagia. This is the guy right to my right. Is my buddy Justin. He had a Carmagia in high school, really cool car. It looked fast, but had a hard time getting over 35. But it looked really cool because people don't know a Carmagia is a Volkswagen. And I don't know if you can see it because maybe when Review puts on the full screen, I've got a rocking chain there. Oh, rocking
Are you actually
gold
wearing
chain.
a gold chain?
And that might even be, I don't know if, because I was known to
not
wear
notice
some
that.
mad turtleneck back in high school too. But here's what I did. I was so poor and had a really raggedy Cavalier that was affectionately known as the Ragalier because the color was kind of rust. But I had rims. I had a little boom, but the boom was kind of fake because here's what I did. I went to JCPenney's outlet, bought a radio, cut the tag off of a speaker grill for Kenwood, and super glued it on the JCPenney's radio.
So it looked like it was a Kenwood radio.
It wasn't until I was actually graduated from college that I confessed this to all my buddies here, and because I still talk to these guys, going down to spring training to watch some baseball, and in just a few months with a lot of these guys, and they still joke about the fact that I was such a tightwad that I was completely fibbing to everybody by having a JCPenney's radio with a Kenwood sticker on it.
That's well, that's really just remarkable.
That's ambitious.
That's ambitious. I love it. For those of you who are asking, I can vouch. His Tesla is an actual Tesla. It's not just a decal. I've ridden in it. I've seen it. It's an actual Tesla. All right. So we'll talk about one of our other team members. Our next team member, this is Carol. And Carol actually shared a wonderful story.
This one is actually good. Like ours were entertaining or funny. Carol's is actually a teachable moment.
So this is what she said. She said, Russ, her husband, took his lunch to work for years. He still does to this day. He would get a cup of water, sweet tea from the cafeteria to go with it. He kept all the plastic lids from his daily drink in a large stack and brought them home one day to show the kids. And what he'd tell the kids is, each one of these lids represents saving about $5 on lunch every day, and that sure adds up over time.
So I thought that was a great teachable concept, is that when he was taking his lunch, because we've all been there. I mean, where we're eating lunch at work and doing things, not going out there and spending the $5 to $7 eating out. He actually created a tangible way to track how much he was saving.
Love it. Love
really
it so
powerful stuff.
This next one, this is actually from producer Reby, and this is what she said. She said, I once tagged along on my sister and brother-in-law's date night. And you would think like, we went to the movies or out to dinner. No. For their date night, they went to Sam's Club and just did a free sample run.
Somehow
Walking up
Reby
and
had
down.
a picture of this. This is why you knew you were predestined to be in media, is you actually had a picture from that night. Now, you said you're in high school in this picture? College. And is that a bangs type thing?
Yeah, the bank.
You're like my wife. Whenever she sees a picture with bangs, she's like, what was I thinking? But it's actually, I think it's great. How many of us go to Costco or Sam's just to eat the samples?
I do.
Or let's face it, guys. Costco has some steak like hot dogs. I mean, it is. If you're going to have a steak of hot dogs,
it's the fillet of hot dogs.
Fillet of hot dogs. You can get a hot dog and a Coke for like $1.88. I mean, that's living right there. My wife gets so mad when I take the family there after church.
So
keep going.
What I love about these is all these have been ways to spend less. We actually have one of our team members though. He said, you know what, I'm going to do it a step, but I'm not just going to focus on spending less. I'm going to figure out a way to go out there and make more. And so this is from Matt Hoffner. He works with a number of you guys out there. He's one of our primary advisors here at the firm. And this is what Matt had to say. He said, Matt's Munchies was my concession business. I would buy stuff in bulk at Costco with my mom and sell snacks and sodas from the back of their van at the end of the driveway to people walking or driving down the street. However, the big bucks were made when I got permission to sell at people's yard sales. Profits were maximized at a low labor costs. I paid my sister 10 cents per hour to help for a long time until my parents found out.
By the way, Matt also, here's what I think is good. The business really was called Matthew's Munchies. But the other part is most people don't realize Matt paid for a lot of college. He made really good money running a retail arbitrage situation before that was even a known kind of concept that people were doing by buying people's used college textbooks and then selling them out there on eBay and other sites. So good for Matt. Like I said, everybody here who's a primary advisor, if I died tomorrow, my wife would be in great hands because these people really do walk the walk. Yep. And that's so important for everybody we have on the team.
So the two signs we've covered so far are you're following the financial order of operations. Number two, you're saving 20 to 25%. But remember, this is three signs you can start spending. And the third one is kind of a big one and kind of an exciting one.
Yeah, number three is your army of dollar bills is actually working harder than you do with your back, your hands, and your brain. And this is one of the powerful things. And this is why it's so super important. You've got to be tracking your annual net worth statement. You guys know that every year we're telling you track your net worth statement so you can see how much are your assets worth. And then you can also see the change in their value. And there's going to come a year, if you're tracking your annual net worth statement, that you'll see the increase in your net worth will exceed what you made with your income. And you're like, whoa, how did that happen? And what happened was your army of dollar bills actually got to a level of critical mass that it is now earning more than you did through capital appreciation, through interest, through dividends. This is the first indicator you're probably at financial independence.
Yeah, and what I think is beautiful is we kind of see this normally happen in sort of two phases. The first phase is your portfolio actually makes more than you can save, right? Yeah. So when you look at how much you save the portfolio, when your portfolio is working harder than you are saving, that's exciting. And then the iteration you're talking about is when your portfolio actually makes more in total than your entire annual income. That just gets super, super, super exciting.
Well, the big transition point, we talk about this invisible hand that's working for you. The big point when your money is actually making more than you can make, you really are at the point that work becomes optional.
That's exactly right.
You are only working because it gives you purpose and happiness, not because you need to. And there is a completely different concept or way your mind works when you know that you're doing this for purpose and fulfillment more than just paying the bills. So that's a huge thing. Focus on what is my army of dollar bills doing? Do I have measurable metrics? That's why you've got to be doing the net worth statement and put this plan into action.
So you may be asking this question, why does this matter, guys? Why are you giving me permission to spend? And here's the reason, because there are some downsides. There are some downsides of living like you're broke or living like you're not where you're supposed to be when in reality, maybe you are where you're supposed to be.
Well, I think we're kind of unique, Bo, because we have all this aspirational content telling people how to become successful, but we have hit upon a nerve recently where we've done the dark side of being a millionaire. And part of this comes from we work with so many successful people that we get to hear the feedback of what's working, what's not working, and even they are confessional to us when there's trouble in paradise. And one of the first things I can tell you, if you're trying to figure out the downside of living like you're broke when you're actually rich. Now look, I am the creator and master of forced scarcity. I do want you to have a concept to while you're being aspirational and building your wealth, I want you to, just like when you get those pay raises, I want 40, 50, 60% of that new pay raise to go towards your savings of the future. But there will come a point That's not necessary. And if you are still having, because this is a phone call I had probably less than 3 months ago, I had a dear friend let me know there were some things going on within the marriage. And when his wife was, when they started really talking about this and peeling back the curtain of where the pain was, this is a couple my age that is sharing that the wife was really troubled that the husband was still having her give receipts on gas. Every time she went to the grocery store, every time she went to shopping, he was asking for a receipt because he was feverishly still recording every transaction into his spreadsheets and all these other things so he could track the budget. I'm all about when you're early, start budgeting. You've got to have discipline in your life. I'm all about graduating from the budget to a cash management. But there is going to come a point where if you have everything on an automated process where you're paying yourself first, you're doing the 20 to 25%, you can see your army of dollar bills working, that if you are still making your spouse give every receipt, you're going to build resentment.
That's exactly
it looks like control. And if you're requiring that much control, that's not a healthy relationship.
Exactly right.
So that's a downside.
And I think what you're saying is relationships can become toxic. And so, again, this is an intern Daniel-ism that was so beautiful. He said, yeah, it's kind of like what you guys are talking about. When people start thinking about this stuff and sort of like idolizing, being so tight and tracking everything, they kind of turn very Gollum-esque, right?
Yeah.
They kind of start thinking about that way about money. You want to make sure that you just don't fall into that situation. You don't want to be someone who holds on to it so tightly that you allow toxicity to enter into your relationships.
Well, I think, and this is one of those things I'm trying to balance this when we're creating content. Because I know when we talk about the value of 88 times over and how powerful your money is, we do want you investing. We want you putting your army of dollar bills. But I tell you this to you all the time, Bo. I'm like, take a deep breath.
Yeah.
You're only in your 20s once.
Yep.
Take a deep breath. You're only in your 30s once. So you got to make sure you're still taking time. You walk that tightrope. You're quickly balancing between building a future with financial independence, but also building memories, having experiences. What's funny is my wife just sent me an article. That's right. My wife is trying to help us with the content creation too. She reads Travel and Leisure.
Okay.
And there was a whole thing talking about the fact that if you are spending money on experiences, there's so many other side benefits. You actually typically, they've done research now, you actually turn out to be a more generous person. You don't focus on the negative. You're more of an optimist because these experiences, as I've shared with you guys, they blossom. They get better. What happens with things? When you buy things, they actually rust. They fall apart. They get antiquated. They don't continue to work better. Your memories, good or bad on the exaggeration factor, they actually blossom into better things. So you got to pay attention to those things because if you go through and you have a miser type life, there's a reason Ebenezer Scrooge kind of, we look at that at Christmas and we go, oh man,
why would you ever be like that?
Wow, that guy's rich. Why would he do that? It's because he's a miser. He's not balancing creating experiences, enjoying life. And there is a balance between the sacrifice and then the spending. And that's why we want to give you permission. If you check the boxes, make sure you're taking time to celebrate and create those memories.
And look, I don't know if this helps you guys, but we tell folks this all the time. You're doing a great job building assets and saving and being so tight. But odds are, if you're leaving a lot of money behind to the next generation, your kids are going to have no problem spending your money, and the stats show that. We've seen that 70% of wealthy families lose their fortune by the second generation.
Yeah.
That means that Junior and Juniette have spent the money. 90% lose it by the third generation. So there is no purpose of you building up the Scrooge McDuck swimming pool full of money, backpedaling in it, and not actually creating those experiences, not actually using the money as a tool, not as a goal itself.
I watched a Denzel Washington clip on YouTube. The algorithm is so awesome. It gives me all these. This past week, Steve Harvey, Denzel Washington, they've all been popping up on my YouTube feed. I don't know what the algorithm's thinking is going on, but Denzel said this, and I'm sure he got it from somebody else too, but he goes, you never see a U-Haul follow in the hearse.
That's right.
You just don't. And then my pastor, just this weekend, he said, there's a famous quote out there as they asked Rockefeller, John D. Rockefeller's accountant, how much he left behind, meaning they wanted a number, and he just gave the simple answer, all of it. You don't get to take this with you, so you better make sure that you have a purpose, a why for every dollar in your army, because if you're just doing it to have a number, it will be empty. So make sure you're taking time to build memories. That's why we do want to make sure you understand the 3 steps of what you can accomplish and give yourself permission to spend. Bo, give us a quick review of what those three are again.
Yeah, sign number one that it's okay to spend is you're following FOO. You're following the financial order of operations. Sign number two is that you're hitting your saving 20 to 25%. Once you've hit that number, it's okay to let off a little bit. And then number three, when you've done the hard work of building wealth, your army of dollar bills actually works harder than you work.
Oh, man. Guys, these were, like I said, it's one of those squishy shows where we're giving you the behaviors of things, but we try to throw you enough data out there. And I want to tell you about a data point we're paying a lot of attention to. We just put it, I couldn't believe it. You guys, it was like late Friday or early Friday. We crossed 50,000. I was so mad because I had visions of us like doing a live broadcast or doing something where we streamed that we were about to cross 50,000. Had no idea it was going to happen like at 2 a.m. or something like that. So we wake up the next morning, we're way past 50,000. And I was like, oh man, we blew an opportunity there. But you guys have been giving us a lot of well wishes. But here's the goal. Please, please, please do not keep us a secret. Tell your friends and family about the Money Guy Show because I want this number to be 100,000 by 12/31 of this year.
You just spoke it.
That is a huge goal. And when you speak it, when you write it, it kind of means it needs to happen. So I need your help, guys. If y'all will help us reach 100,000, please tell your friends and family. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Ring the bell for good service so you all actually get all the notifications of what's going on. And it will, this is fun. We're having an absolute blast. A lot of you guys when we were at, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 subscribers, like, man, it's a travesty that you guys don't have even more subscribers. We want to keep that momentum going. So thank you for helping us with that. And it also ties into this abundance cycle. Yep. We come here, you're like, if this is your first episode, you're like, wow, these guys, they're throwing a lot at me. What's the catch? Where's the infomercial?
Where's the sales pitch?
There's a sales pitch. It's coming somewhere. Well, here it is. We want you to come here, learn all the free information we're giving you. Learn. I want you to start applying some of these concepts in your life. There will come, and it might be years. We're planting seeds. Just like I was talking about that kernel of corn earlier. We're planting seeds that I know it's going to start blossoming. It's going to start showing some green. And then it's going to turn into a stalk. And it's going to eventually start bearing fruit. And when it bears fruit and you're realizing you're so successful, you need somebody to kind of be in your corner and help you out with the process. You're going to remember, who was the one that helped me plant that kernel of corn? And you remember the Money Guy team. And that's where the Money Guy abundance cycle comes to fruition and kind of reaches the heart. That's when you harvest the fruit at that point. So guys, the abundance cycle, it's worked since 2006 and we just love you and appreciate and do not take for granted. That's why we work so daggum hard, is that we want to continue to give you guys great value and content.
If you haven't had a chance to check out one of our live streams, make sure you do that. After we turn off the recording device right now, we're going to stay on here, and we're going to do some Q&As. We're going to answer some questions. It's the only way that you can get a Money Guy tumbler. Some folks told me we might even start sending out some Money Guy koozies with them. I don't know. You'll have to hang out in the Q&A and see if that actually happens. Thank you guys so much. Go out to the website, moneyguy.com. Go check out our resource page, and we just thank you for letting us hang out with you.
Money Guy team, out.